Discover the incredible journey of a silent heiress. One sip unveils an amazing transformation. Amelia Hartley stood at the threshold of her grandmother's estate, a weathered monument to forgotten creativity. The cracked windows seemed to whisper long-buried secrets, each gust of wind like a ghostly breath calling her inside. She hesitated. Was she truly ready to confront the remnants of a legacy that had haunted her since childhood? A notorious artist, her grandmother had been both revered and shunned, an enigma tangled in whispers of talent and tragedy. With an estate to reclaim, Amelia felt the weight of expectation pressing against her chest both from dead voices and the living. As she stepped over the threshold, dust motes danced in the sunlight, illuminating her path. The air hung thick with the scent of mildew, mixing with an acrid tinge of regret. The art studio was a mausoleum of abandoned canvases, brushes stiff with neglect. Yet one painting caught her breath, a nearly finished piece with colors swirling in a chaotic melody, stark against the disarray surrounding it. Memories of late nights listening to her grandmother's stories collided in her mind. Dare to dream, Amelia, her grandmother would say, urging her to embrace her imagination. But dare? She took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of her choices wrapping around her like the cold, clammy fingers of doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the weeks passed, scrubbing away years of grime became her routine, but so did the anxiety that clawed at her insides. Each stroke of the brush felt like a battle between past reverence and present ambition. She could almost hear the echoes of the elite crowd that had scoffed at her grandmother's rebellious spirit, including the whispers that hinted at scandal. What if they rejected her, too? Would they dismiss the worth of her work simply because of her roots in this town, a place struggling beneath the weight of its own neglect? The looming exhibit, a showcase that could change everything, filled her with a yearning that flared to life, yet left her feeling vulnerable. Mornings drifted into afternoons while she worked with Harold, the retired artist, absorbing every ounce of wisdom. His guidance was a lifeline. Yet Amelia still wrestled with shadows of inferiority that darkened her resolve. With each brushstroke, she faced bittersweet flashes of her grandmother's legacy intertwined with her own identity, one tainted by doubt, the other ignited with passion. And then there was the promise of that coffee, a potential offering from the gallery director, a figure defined by their influence and poised to reshape her fate with a single sip. She imagined the scene. Would her hand tremble as she reached for the cup, the steam curling around her like a siren? That moment loomed closer, a tantalizing escape from everything that felt familiar yet constricting. What if she accepted it? Would a taste of acceptance turn into the bitter aftertaste of compromise? Amelia wrestled with the horror of selling her authenticity, her heart pounding not with excitement, but with fear. As she stood before the half-finished masterpiece, grappling with her decision to embrace her family's past or step fearlessly into her own future, a question loomed like a storm cloud. Could she truly bridge the gap between duty and desire? The gusty wind rattled the window panes as she faced the stirring elements of her choice, but the answer felt as unreachable as the distant hum of life beyond her own four walls. The stakes of redefining blurry lines. A belonging loomed ever larger. It was clear that her journey was only just beginning. Amelia awoke to the shrill cry of her phone, the screen flashing with a message. Harold had invited her to an impromptu meeting at the estate studio. His tone was urgent, promising significant insight into her upcoming exhibit. Hastily, she dressed and darted through the faded hallways, her heart racing with apprehension as she recalled Harold's encouraging words from the previous days. Fear is the brush. Confidence is the color, he often reminded her. Yet, Today, she felt as if she was merely tracing lines of hesitation rather than painting bold strokes of intention. Upon entering the studio, she found Harold staring solemnly at her grandmother's unfinished canvas, his expression a mix of reverence and confusion. "Amelia, there's something about your grandmother's work that I need to share," he began, his voice thick with emotion. She poured her soul into every brushstroke, revealing facets of herself that she couldn't articulate in words. Amelia swallowed the knot in her throat. But what if I can't capture that same energy? What if no one will care about my perspective? She could feel her insecurities crawling back, wrapping around her like the shrouded paintings lining the walls. "Art is an extension of the self," he replied firmly. "Yours is a different voice, but no less significant. Have you ever considered that your fears might be the very thing that makes your work authentic? Your vulnerability can connect with others in ways you might not yet understand." Amelia paused, absorbing his words as she glanced back at the chaotic pieces she had been working on. Perhaps it was time to confront the fragments of her life, both past and present, with honesty. "You're right. I have too often held back," she admitted, the realization settling like a weight in her chest. With newfound determination, Amelia picked up her brush. She began to layer rich hues over the canvas, intent on infusing her true essence into the piece. As colors merged and clashed, she found herself lost in the rhythm of creation, the previous worries fading into insignificance. Hours passed, and the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the studio. Just as she was about to step back for a moment of reflection, the heavy door swung open. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, the gallery director, Nathaniel, who had been the subject of countless conversations and sleepless nights. "Amelia," he said sharply, breaking the tense silence. "I've seen what you're working on via social media, and I had to come witness it for myself." His expression held a mixture of intrigue and expectation, prompting a rush of adrenaline through her veins. But with his arrival came a flood of self-doubt. Would he see through her artistic bravado? She could feel the weight of her grandmother's legacy pressing against her like a hand on her shoulder, urging her to rise to the occasion. "Do you think you're ready to present this?" Nathaniel's voice sliced through her thoughts, and for a moment, the room filled with an electric silence. Amelia's heart raced as she faced a critical choice: reveal her struggles, her authenticity, or hide behind her grandmother's shadows. "I'm not sure if I'm ready," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. His response surprised her. Being unsure is part of the process. The best art comes from that very place. "Let me see your heart, Amelia. Show me who you truly are." With his words echoing in her mind, Amelia stood poised at the crossroads of her creative journey, all the while feeling the relentless tide of fear threatening to pull her under. Could she bear her soul on canvas, confronting every layer of her identity? And in that moment, she realized she wasn't merely seeking validation. She was on the brink of unveiling a truth that could transform not just her art, but herself. As she looked over her nearly finished painting, a surge of determination coursed through her veins. The storm was brewing, and she was finally ready to embrace it. Tomorrow would demand a decision, one that could alter her future forever. Would that coffee with Nathaniel be the catalyst for the transformation she sought, or would it seal her back in her cocoon of uncertainty? The stakes had never felt higher. As the first light of dawn seeped through the studio windows, Amelia couldn't shake the weight of anticipation. The air bristled with possibility, a tangible reminder of the crossroads she faced. Today was the day she would sit across from Nathaniel, the gallery director who embodied both promise and fear. She arrived at the cafe early, her nerves aflame as she stared at the steaming cup of coffee before her. The aroma wafted up, enveloping her in memories of better days spent with her grandmother over illustrations and laughter. It offered warmth, but more importantly, clarity. What did she want from this meeting? What did she want from herself? With every sip, Amelia considered her options. She envisioned revealing the raw, unfiltered essence of her art to Nathaniel, bearing everything she feared sharing. Or perhaps she would retreat into safe discussions of technique and legacy, skirt the edge of vulnerability. Both paths lay before her, and she felt the need to choose not only her words but her future. When Nathaniel arrived, she noted his confident stride and open demeanor. Even as he approached, she grappled with self-doubt. He offered a casual smile, yet something in his gaze felt probing, as if he could read the turmoil within. "Amelia," he greeted, "I was hoping to talk about your latest piece." An unsettling heat washed over her as she nodded. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot." He leaned in, studying her, and she felt the weight of years spent in the shadows of expectation. "Your grandmother was an extraordinary artist. I sense you carry that torch, but there is something wholly distinct about your work. What is it that you want the audience to see?" The question resonated through her, shredding her carefully constructed defenses. This was the heart of the matter. What did she want to say? "I want them to see me," Amelia admitted, her voice steadier than she felt. "Not merely echoes of my grandmother's past. My life has been chaos, and I want that authenticity to show through." "That's a powerful answer," Nathaniel replied, his eyes narrowing slightly as if weighing her sincerity. "But authenticity is intimidating. Are you prepared for the vulnerability that comes with it?" His words struck her like a bell chiming in the distance. Vulnerability was exactly what had held her back for so long. She shielded herself behind layers of expectation, afraid that if she opened her heart, the world would dismiss her as an imposter. Yet here she was, confronting the truth. Vulnerability could be her strength, not her weakness. "I think so," Amelia responded, her resolve solidifying. "The fear doesn't go away, but I've realized I can't live in that fear forever. It's time I face the canvas as my true self, flaws and all." Nathaniel nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "Then let us set a date, not just to showcase what you create, but to showcase who you really are. You can unveil your heart." "Amelia." His belief acted like a lifeline, securing her determination. Still, something gnawed at her. The journey to true self-expression meant confronting not just her art, but also the intricate expectations she had placed on herself. It also meant dismantling the fears she still harbored about her grandmother's legacy overshadowing her efforts. As they parted ways, Amelia felt an unexpected rush of freedom. Yet in that release lay new questions. Would she truly be able to weather the storm of public scrutiny? Would her vulnerability resonate, or would it expose her to deeper wounds? Now, as she returned to her studio, a tangle of emotions stirred within. The path ahead felt uncertain yet exhilarating. The brush awaited her touch, standing as a monument to both her fears and her potential. What she didn't yet know, however, was that the strongest adversary she would face wouldn't be public opinion or self-doubt, but her own ingrained habits of obscurity. Tomorrow, she would begin not just to create but to reveal. And within that shift, a confrontation awaited, one that would test every ounce of courage she had not yet discovered within. Herself. Could she embrace the tumult ahead, or would she retreat once more? That question loomed, casting a long shadow over her intentions, as she prepared to dive deeper into her journey. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over Amelia's studio as she stood before the blank canvas. The lingering echoes of her conversation with Nathaniel resonated in her mind, nudging her toward an awakening she had long evaded. Today marked a pivotal shift. The promise of unveiling her authentic self beckoned her forward, while the shadows of doubt murmured their seductive lullabies. Amelia took a deep breath and stepped into the realm of possibility. She dipped her brush into vibrant colors, letting her instincts guide her as they coursed through her veins. Each stroke was a rebellion against the ingrained patterns of her life, a defiance of the confines that had long dictated her art. The canvas absorbed her emotions, her hopes mingling with hues of blue and hints of crimson, mirroring the chaos and clarity in her heart. As she painted, she was struck by the realization that authenticity was not merely a concept to explore. It was an emotion to embody. The juxtaposition of confidence and trepidation fueled her creativity, bringing forth elements that communicated not just beauty, but struggle and triumph. In those moments, she discovered a newfound understanding. Her art could serve as the lens through which she viewed her own transformation. With every brushstroke, she caught glimpses of her own grit, its unfamiliarity, both intoxicating and terrifying. Yet, as exhilaration ascended, so too did the lurking voice of self-doubt. What if Nathaniel was wrong? What if the world saw her vulnerability not as strength, but as an invitation to mock her as an amateur? Hours melted into one another as her hands moved, and with them, the duality of freedom and fear coalesced into a single question. Was her voice truly worth the risk? She paused, stepping back to assess her progress. In the consolidation of the colors, she discerned a figure forming, perhaps a reflection of her past, tangled with the brightness of her potential. It felt raw, yet intimate. But how would it resonate with others? Good or bad? It's mine, Amelia whispered to the quiet of the studio, her words sounding strange yet liberating. With that affirmation, she plunged back into the creation. The brush became an extension of her spirit, wielding the vulnerability she had so long shunned as her greatest weapon. Just then, a knock interrupted her concentration. Startled, she turned, and the anxieties she had pacified surged back. "Come," she called, her mind racing with the possibilities of who it could be. The door creaked open, and in walked Mia, her best friend since childhood, exuding a radiant encouragement, always teetering at the edges of Amelia's doubts. "Wow, it smells like inspiration in here," Mia said, taking the art sprawled around the studio. Amelia attempted to maintain her bravado, but the uncertainty in her heart leaked through. "I'm just trying to find a way to express everything." "Your everything?" Mia asked, her eyes narrowing with understanding. "Are you afraid of the reception?" "A little," Amelia admitted, her facade cracking. "Nathaniel thinks I should show him what's real. But what if the real is too much? Or not enough?" Mia countered gently. "What matters is that it's yours, not anyone else's." Her words acted as a balm, and for the first time, Amelia considered embracing the risk entirely. But was she ready? With the canvas demanding her attention and Mia's presence offering support, Amelia felt the weight of decision settle on her. She would have to not only confront the judgment of others, but delve into her relationship with herself. Would she be a prisoner of expectation or the architect of her freedom? With newfound resolve, she reached for her brush and prepared to step fully into the world. She was creating a world born out of authenticity and bravery. Yet, just as the colors melded and shaped into definitions of her essence, a chilling realization surfaced. To grow would mean dismantling the very image of the quiet heiress she had always played. Could she bore witness to her own transformation without retreating? The belief in her future flickered like a candle in the wind, inviting yet precarious. As the sun dipped lower, Amelia's heartbeat quickened, knowing her next move could either solidify her evolution or force her back into the shadows. The question loomed, pressing its urgency against her. What if embracing her truth unveiled a path she had yet to discover? Tomorrow, she would face more than a canvas. She would confront the extent of her own courage. The stakes were high, but this crucible of exposure was the only way forward. The moment she survived her truth could redefine everything. Amelia awoke to the soft light of dawn filtering through her studio windows, casting a gentle warmth across her peeling paint and scattered paint tubes. The vibrant chaos she had birthed the day before lingered, not merely as remnants of a creative session, but as an echo of a promise she made to herself. Today was another layer of her journey toward authenticity, and she felt an electric anticipation thrumming in her veins. She eased out of bed, glancing at her reflection. The woman staring back seemed transformed, already less the reserved heiress and more an artist beginning to bloom. However, beneath the surface, insecurities coiled like snakes, ready to strike. How could she reconcile the world Amelia's expectations with her burgeoning self. Taking a deep breath, Amelia resolved to confront those fears head-on, not letting them overpower her creative flow. In the studio, the canvas awaited like a mirror reflecting her soul. Each color she squeezed onto her palette glistened with possibilities, a celebration of light and dark intermingling. Today would not be about merely expressing herself. It would be a dive into the depths of who she was. She envisioned a piece that could encapsulate her transformation, merging her past with her aspirations, and serving as a starting point for something revolutionary. As she dipped her brush into the first stroke, the brush became a wand, channeling not simply pigment, but a cocktail of emotions: hope, uncertainty, passion, and fear. It was a captivating chaos, a visual manifestation of her inner turmoil. What if this painting, imperfect yet sincere, revealed depths of vulnerability that were too raw for the public eye? The thought was paralyzing, yet invigorating. Did she want to be recognized as a master of pretense? Or did she long to be known as a creator of authenticity? Midway through a vivid swirl of blues, a shadow entered the studio. It was Mia again, bearing the ever-enthusiastic energy of a cheerleader supporting a team in distress. "You're Ed Early. I knew you couldn't resist." Amelia chuckled lightly, but then the twist of dread coiled in her stomach. "What if today's the day I fail?" she uttered with unexpected vulnerability, the words hastily escaping as though she had been holding them back. "Failure?" Mia echoed, eyebrows raised incredulously. "Love, what does that even mean? You think failure is putting something out there that doesn't resonate? It's only failure if you don't try. What you've created is uniquely yours. No one can take that from you." The encouragement reignited a flicker of determination in Amelia, but it was coupled with an overwhelming weight of expectation. As Mia picked up a brush and dabbed it in a vibrant persimmon, she leaned conspiratorially. "Let us paint together, just for fun. Let go of perfection. Let us drown in creativity." With a hesitant nod, Amelia relinquished her tight grip on expectation. Together, they layered strokes atop strokes, creating an abstract alignment of colors. This chaotic collaboration reminded Amelia of the carefree spirit of childhood, when art meant joy rather than judgment. It felt like a liberation, an unraveling not just of her fears, but of the self-imposed rules she'd adhered to for far too long. Yet beneath the surface of this newfound camaraderie, a question persisted, lingering like an uninvited guest. What if Mia was right? Or worse, what if she wasn't? What if the very act of unveiling her truth led to ridicule rather than acceptance? Just when she began to lose herself in the rhythm of shared creativity, the thought of Nathaniel brushed through her consciousness. His expectations loomed large, casting doubt on her burgeoning beliefs. The vision of baring her soul felt perilous. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating their collaboration, the studio felt alive, full of promise, yet heavy with the potential for judgment. As the painting took shape, so did Amelia's realization that the crux of her journey lay on the brink of exposure. Moments from now, she would have to commit to this piece, and by extension her newfound self. Would she risk the discomfort of unveiling her truth to the world, or retreat once again into the shadows? The paint on her palette began to dry, echoing the ticking clock of her decision. Would she walk the path of self-validation, or would she edge back into the familiar embrace of anonymity? The moment hung in suspense, tantalizingly close yet daunting. Tomorrow, Amelia would have to choose. With a brush poised above the canvas, she held her breath, ready to either take a leap or linger in the safety of the known. What awaited her just beyond the canvas could alter the fabric of her life irreversibly. As the dawn stretched into morning, Amelia felt the weight of the brush heavy in her hand. She glanced at the canvas, vibrant colors swirling together like a storm of emotions. This was her moment. She had gathered the courage to face what was her truth, but her heart beat with the anxiety of what lay ahead. Mia, oblivious to the turmoil within, suddenly exclaimed, You've got to see this." She stepped back and tilted her head, admiring their collaborative work. Amelia's fear began to mingle with curiosity. Was the creation before her truly a reflection of herself? She had infused pieces of her soul into the chaotic form, yet uncertainty clung to her like an unwanted shadow. "Let us call it unraveled," Mia proposed, a playful grin spreading across her face. "It's messy, complex, and utterly beautiful just like you." Amelia ignored the compliment, absorbed in the image represented on the canvas. Could she truly call it hers? Her inner critic quick to rise, through accusations. "It lacks coherence. You shouldn't put this out there. What if people don't understand?" "Stop," Amelia whispered to herself, almost daring to interrupt those deriding thoughts. In that moment, she realized the truth nestled silently within her. This piece was more than a painting. It was the embodiment of her journey, engaging with the messiness of life in all its rawness. Yet, the comfortable cocoon of anonymity loomed, whispering temptations. What would her family think? Nathaniel, in his polished world of high art and social expectations, would certainly smirk at the unrefined chaos spilling over the canvas. She could already imagine his bemused expression, the elegant disdain in his voice, saying it all. This is art you'd expect from someone without the proper training. With an intentional breath, Amelia shook off the thought. Today was about unfurling the layers of herself she had kept tucked away. The artist, the woman, the individual pursuing authenticity. The uncertainty didn't lessen, but it shifted. It became a companion rather than an opponent, a reminder of the risk that came with true expression. Mia's loud hum interrupted her thoughts, drawing Amelia back into the present. No one knows what goes into making a masterpiece better than the artist. She waved her hands as if conducting an orchestra. Be bold, take the leap. Own it. You'll never know the impact of your art unless you share it. Every fiber of Amelia battled with Mia's encourage to expose herself. But what if? She began, but quickly halted, realizing that allowing the what-ifs to dictate her journey was a dead end. A fleeting image of her mother, all grace and propriety, surged in her mind. Her mother always advocated for polish and perfection, each brushstroke deliberate. In stark contrast, Amelia's heart beat for the unpolished beauty that came from imperfection. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the studio, the shadows of her fear began to retreat. The colors on the canvas suddenly glowed with the promise of potential. The piece was full of life, like the reverberations of a heartbeat. Then came Mia's voice, calm yet playful. "Are we going to pretend this isn't incredible? Because it is. And you, my dear, are an artist who matters. It's time to step out of the shadows." Amelia realized she was at a crossroads. She could either yield to the gravitational pull of fear or leap into the unknown, embracing her identity. Today would not be just about painting. It would be about defining who she wanted to be. The brush hovered again above the canvas, her heart galloping in her chest. "I'm ready," she whispered, not yet knowing the implications of her choice. But just as she dipped her brush into the paint, the sound of a door creaking open caught her attention. Nathaniel stood there, his gaze penetrating, as if he had come just in time to witness her moment of truth. His presence felt electric and oppressive, showcasing the specter of expectations looming large. As the tension mounted, Amelia suddenly questioned, would this encounter catalyze her authenticity or shatter it? The decision lay heavy, as uncertain as the colors blending on her canvas. Amelia's pulse quickened, caught in a cyclone of emotions as Nathaniel leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his expression an unyielding mask of curiosity and skepticism. The sunlight streamed around him, illuminating the sharp angles of his refined features, casting a shadow over her burgeoning resolve. Would he see the authenticity of her work as a reflection of her true self, or would he mock the honesty she felt bubbling to the surface? "Ah, I see you've been busy," he remarked, a slight smirk dancing at the corners of his lips. His voice was smooth, yet held an edge of condescension that knotted her stomach. Is that your latest attempt at art or a private therapy session? Amelia's heart raced as she struggled to contain the heat rising in her cheeks. This was the crux of her fear, the prospect of being dismissed, her passion reduced to something trivial. But beneath the sting of his words, she felt the flicker of defiance ignite. It's both, she replied, surprised by the strength in her own voice. Art is a reflection of who we are, Nathaniel. It's not always about what is polished or perfect. For a moment, Nathaniel's gaze faltered, a hint of intrigue flickering in his deep-set eyes. Perhaps he had not expected such a retort. Then, as if shaking off the moment, he stepped forward, glancing over the canvas. Amelia's heart raced. This was the moment of truth, a confrontation with her hidden self. "You call this art?" he asked, a performative skepticism lacing his words as he gestured toward the vibrant chaos that sprawled across the canvas. "It looks like you threw paint at a wall out of frustration. What are you trying to express exactly?" Amelia felt the heat of her own embarrassment start to evaporate into resolve. "I'm expressing freedom, the complexity of being myself in a world that demands conformity," she declared, her breath quickening with each word. "You would understand that, would you?" His laughter rang out, cold and dismissive. "You think this will resonate with anyone beyond your small circle of friends? You need to think of the audience, Amelia. The critics will see right through this facade." Her heart sank, but only momentarily. She wasn't about to let him extinguish the spark of authenticity that had finally begun to illuminate her path. "I have to create for myself, Nathaniel," she said, conviction powering her words. "Not for an audience or for you." As she spoke, a realization washed over her. His opinion, while powerful, was rooted in a world she was working hard to break free from, one that prized conformity over creativity. This tension was the very essence of her struggle, the push and pull of obligation versus desire. "Nathaniel," she continued, her voice firm, "I refuse to let your standards dictate my worth as an artist. This is my identity, raw and imperfect. If it doesn't appeal to you, then perhaps I'm on the right track." His expression shifted, the contemptors fading slightly to reveal a curious uncertainty. For the first time, Amelia felt she could breach his polished facade, could maybe even chip away at the burden of expectation that weighed on her own shoulders. But before she could savor her small victory, he recovered. "You've always loved drama," he said, brushing her words aside once more. "But remember, art is a business too. If this is your passion, you ought to be thinking about how to sell it, how to make it commercially viable." The suggestion rattled Amelia. The very thought of commodifying her raw emotions felt like a betrayal to her artistic journey. How could she reconcile the authenticity she craved with commercial expectations? The voice of her internal critic whispered again, nudging her toward doubt. As Nathaniel continued his unsolicited critique, Amelia forced herself to breathe, maintaining her focus on the canvas. Each brushstroke was a commitment to her identity, and she felt the weight of his presence against the vibrant backdrop of her creation. She had been seeking approval her whole life, but this moment was an inflection point. She could redefine her story. It was time to question traditional boundaries and assert her narrative over her art. But could she truly embrace this newfound resolve? Just as she felt the embers of determination ignite within her, Nathaniel's wave of finality struck her, a challenge threaded through with an ultimatum. If you want to be taken seriously, you'll need to evolve. A decision hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. This was not merely about acceptance or rejection. It was a catalyst for her artistic evolution. Could she transform expectations into a canvas for her voice? As the confrontation simmered, Amelia felt the question crystallize. What does it mean to evolve without surrendering your essence? In that very moment, she understood her next step would demand everything from her strength, vulnerability, and resilience. The brush shook slightly in her hand as she faced Nathaniel's expectant gaze, a duel between contrasting philosophies on art and self-expression. And as he waited for her response, she realized she was standing on the precipice of her own metamorphosis. Would she take that leap into the unknown? As she wrestled with this question, a flicker of doubt whispered again. But this time, she took a breath, preparing to make a choice that would bridge the easy path of compliance with the challenging but authentic expression that tugged at her heart. The moment stretched, ripe with potential, as a simmering sense of transformation filled the room. But what would her decision reveal? Would she unveil the artist she wanted to be, or retreat back into the shadows for the sake of acceptance? Amelia stood before Nathaniel, the tension between them an electric current that threatened to ignite or shatter her newfound resolve. The air was thick with expectation, and although glimmers of doubt flickered at the edges of her composure, she found solace in the chaotic beauty of her canvas. The vibrant colors swirled like the myriad emotions coursing through her. This was not just art, it was her essence laid bare. Art is meant to provoke, she stated, grounded in the passion of her convictions. You may not see it, but that doesn't devalue the journey it represents. I won't compromise my vision for commercial gain. Nathaniel's brow furrowed, and she could see the gears turning in his mind. For a moment, it seemed he was contemplating the fragility of her assertion, the weight of her truth confronting the rigidity of his beliefs. You might feel that way now, he countered, the snare of condescension tightening around his words. But tell me, how far will that take you? Artists get lost in their ideals all the time. You need marketability, focus. It's not just about you. With each verbal strike, a deeper part of Amelia stirred, awakening the tension between her artistic aspirations and the impersonal pressures of a commercial landscape. Was he right? Would she end up lost, consumed by a self-indulgent trajectory, forever murmuring threats of authenticity, drowning in denial of her potential? You think I'm lost? She challenged, pushing back against his unyielding skepticism. I'm finally finding myself, and it terrifies me. It took years of hiding behind walls to uncover this voice. I won't allow anyone to define my worth. The words danced in the air, and for the first time, rather than indignation, Nathaniel condescended with silence. It was a vulnerable moment, and Amelia felt a rush of clarity, birthing a pivotal determination. She felt herself stepping toward the edge not of fear, but of possibility. Yet the specter of doubt loomed large, insisting she consider what lay beyond her artistic independence. Nathaniel's assertion echoed ominously. Change required evolution, but how could she evolve without annihilating the very core of who she was? Amelia's uncertainty began to unravel into tangible ideas. What if she utilized the very chaos Nathaniel dismissed as inconsequential? What if this emotional tempest could serve as a bridge to a wider audience, inspiring those lost within their own chaos? Could her unrefined expression resonate beyond her small circle? She could feel the embers of possibility igniting again. The choice lay before her. Forge ahead into uncharted territory or retreat into safe familiarity. Nathaniel's figure seemed to shift in her periphery, the weight of his expectations shrinking. This revelation propelled her deeper into reflection. Defining her worth could mean confronting commercial viability while preserving authenticity. It was not an abandonment of integrity, but a strategic evolution. The beauty of art was meant to be shared, yet its purity needed fierce guardianship. Perhaps she began carefully, each word crafted with intention. I don't have to mold my art to suit an audience, but rather invite them in through my journey. My work can be raw, and with that rawness, it can communicate deeply. Nathaniel's face morphed between skepticism and intrigue. Amelia grasped that she was articulating not only her resolve, but also a path forward. Each brushstroke could reflect her authenticity, each canvas a stepping stone toward a broader conversation. But what will you do then? He pressed. How will you bridge the gap between creation and commercial success without losing yourself? The question lay heavy within her chest, and suddenly, the potential paths unraveled in stark contrast before her. I'll experiment, she declared, a new fire igniting behind her eyes. I don't need the answer now. but I'll explore. It was a promise she made to herself to embrace both vulnerability and enterprise with equal fervor. Nathaniel's expression shifted subtly, as though he recognized the gravity of her decision. He leaned back against the wall, perhaps sensing the turbulence of transformation settling into resolve. As Amelia picked up her brush, poised to embark on this new chapter, a profound understanding enveloped her. The journey ahead required more than skill. It demanded courage to navigate a landscape defined by her evolving identity. But could she balance her purity with the pragmatism that Nathaniel advocated? The realm of possibility stretched ahead like endless brush strokes yet unpainted. She could feel the quiver of excitement mingling with fear. Every masterpiece begins with a leap of faith, she murmured to herself, entwining her destiny with her art in ways she had not dared to envision before. Just as she dipped the brush into color, a thought pierced her clarity. The true challenge lay in maintaining that delicate equilibrium between expressiveness and marketability. With her heart pounding in anticipation, Amelia stared at the blank canvas awaiting her. Would this evolution redefine not just her art, but her very existence? The question lingered, faint but insistent, as she prepared to step into a realm where she would confront the shadows of doubt, facing her artistic self with unrelenting resolve. As she took a breath, the potential swirled around her. A catalyst for change was igniting within those colors. And with each stroke, she would discover just how far her journey might lead. Would this new path reveal truths in her artistry she had yet to uncover, or would she find herself lost amid the brushstrokes of expectation? The canvas stared back, a swirling world of white awaiting her command. Each breath she took wasn't just air. It was a tether to both her ambition and fear. Amelia dipped her brush into vibrant hues, allowing spontaneity to guide her movements. This was her refuge, yet now it felt like a battleground where her identity was at stake. As she layered the colors, the brush seemed to whisper secrets. Each stroke ignited emotions buried beneath years of conformity. She allowed chaos to manifest on the canvas, a visual representation of her tumultuous journey from self-doubt to self-discovery. The imperfections formed a beautiful narrative, one that resonated with her belief that art could reflect an unfiltered truth. But the weight of expectations loomed heavily. Nathaniel's earlier comments reverberated in her mind. Marketability versus authenticity. The dichotomy felt like shackles tightening around her wrists. Did she need to send out a polished version of herself into the world? The notion churned like a storm inside her, threatening to unravel the very fabric of her newfound resolve. Breathing deeply, she fixed her gaze on a nearby mirror. The reflection exposed not just a woman with paint-smeared hands, but an artist on the precipice of transformation. What if her worth wasn't solely tied to the commercial success of her work? Would embracing her chaotic process ultimately invite a wider audience? A surge of determination propelled her focus back to the canvas. Amelia dipped her brush into a rich crimson, envisioning the emotions that color evoked: passion, anger, love. With each application, she let go of perceptions, pouring her spirit into the work, creating a tapestry of exuberance and rawness that danced with energy. It was intoxicating, liberating. She was beginning to carve out her niche, a distinct voice within a saturated market. As the colors began to mingle, she turned her attention outward, embracing risk and vulnerability. What if she documented her process? What if she shared her fears alongside her successes? The thought sparked a new direction. Instead of hiding, she could expose her journey, inviting others to witness the evolution. Perhaps her art was more than aesthetics. It could serve as a pillar for conversation, a catalyst for connection. Experimenting wasn't merely about creating, it was about exploring the stories behind the strokes. Her pulse quickened as the idea transformed into a mantra. Transparency in creation fosters relatability. The chaos that once frightened her began to hum with potential. Every imperfection became a testament to resilience. A sudden knock startled her, drawing her out of her reverie. It was her friend Lily, an inspiring photographer whose work had always resonated with Amelia's vision. "Hey, I wanted to show you something," Lily exclaimed, brandishing a sleek camera with excitement. Amelia's curiosity piqued, but it was the undercurrent of inspiration echoing between them that intrigued her more. "Cool, mean, I was just experimenting. Do you think there's room for honesty in art?" she asked, eager to share her new outlook. Lily stepped into the chaos of colors, her eyes widening with excitement. "Absolutely. It could be your greatest strength. But how do you plan to balance it all? The vulnerability, the art, and everything else?" The weight of her friend's question hung in the air like an unfurling banner, demanding clarity. The conversation with Nathaniel flickered in the back of her mind, warning of discomfort, yet promising growth. Could she articulate the potential fusion of her journey with a marketable story? Amelia's heart began to race as ideas collided. She envisioned not just paintings but a shared experience, an exhibition that documented her progress in raw honesty. What if I combined the art with narration? What if my works became chapters, and each phase of creating led the audience through my evolution? Lily looked equally bewildered and excited. That could change everything, but you'd be putting your whole self out there. Are you ready for that? A deep breath rippled through Amelia. Was she truly ready? The question spun within her, a feeling of exhilaration tinged with fear. Vulnerability liberated, but also exposed her to judgment. Yet, the prospect of bridging her internal journey with external revelation felt vital. "Let us capture the process," Amelia said with newfound conviction. "I need to document not just the final product, but the entire landscape, the fears, the failures, and the triumphs." As they began discussing plans, Amelia felt the weight of uncertainty coalescing into a charged resolve. She stood at a crossroads, poised to navigate a world of both authenticity and vulnerability. The path was unclear, perhaps fraught with difficulty, but now the journey felt more inviting. Would this willingness to embrace her true self lead her to unforeseen realms? Would transparency become a transformative lens, reshaping not only her art, but her personal identity as well? The room pulsed with energy, and Amelia realized that she was only just beginning to uncover her depth. The world outside beckoned her to step forward. Yet, beyond this new venture, what revelations awaited her in the depths of her own silence? Amelia Hartley stood before her easel, the light filtering through the grime-streaked windows of her grandmother's estate, illuminating the vibrant chaos unfurling on the canvas. With each brushstroke, she felt a surge of autonomy, a connection to her true self, invigorated by the authentic expression of her journey. Today was different. Today marked the culmination of her transformation from the silent heiress to a voice liberated from expectation. As she stepped back to survey her work, she saw not just paint, but an unfiltered narrative. The struggles, the doubts, and most importantly, the exhilarating embrace of vulnerability. She had come to understand that authenticity was not something to shy away from. It was a strength that could resonate far beyond her own heart, capable of uniting those who felt trapped by their own facades. The canvas, now bursting with life, mirrored her evolution, a tapestry woven from the threads of her fears and triumphs. The urge to share her story pulsed through her veins like a wildfire, threatening to burst free. She had spent too long hiding behind her family's legacy, behind her own insecurities. Every chaotic swirl of color was a declaration. She would no longer allow others to define her worth. What she had created here was more than art. It was a testament to her resilience, a reflection of her authentic self that had finally emerged from the shadows of doubt. With renewed determination, she felt the urge to document her journey. It was not enough to paint. She had to narrate not just the final product, but the entirety of her process. She envisioned her upcoming exhibition, Unraveled, the journey of authenticity. Each painting would represent a stage of her evolution, paired with reflections on her fears, the times she felt inadequate, and her ultimate decision to embrace who she truly was. Making her way to the gallery later that day, each step felt like a reclamation of her narrative. The walls had seen art before, but nothing like this. She marveled at how she had become an artist focused on connection rather than validation. The apprehension lingered, but it was now infused with the thrill of owning her voice. Standing before Nathaniel, who bore the weight of expectation she had once feared, Amelia envisioned the resolution she would soon convey. Nathaniel, she began, the tremors of her earlier uncertainty replaced with a solid grounding. I've decided that my work will not comply with the ideals you expect. I'm showcasing my journey through this exhibition, the unvarnished truth of creation exposed. He arched a brow, skepticism manifesting in the slight curl of his lip. You think honesty will sell? It's not about selling, she countered, a newfound fierceness igniting her tone. It's about connecting. I want people to witness my struggles and celebrate the courage it took to share them. This piece, she gestured toward the vibrant painting, is not just a narrative of art. It's a bridge for others. Nathaniel's expression shifted, a flicker of intrigue creased his brow. Interesting angle. But you know this could alienate those who are used to something more polished. Perhaps, Amelia replied, heartbeat steadying as she found her rhythm. But what if it draws in those who crave authenticity? The art should invoke conversation. That's where true connection lies. This wasn't merely about acceptance anymore. It was about asserting her identity, a complex but vibrant identity worthy of recognition. As she spoke, a wave of contemplation swept over Nathaniel, his gaze softening for the first time. Then let us see what you can do, he said, his tone cautious yet intrigued. The decision had not only been a defining moment in her artistry, but a commitment to herself. Amelia felt confident for the first time, her competence recognized not through his validation, but through her own conviction. She returned to the studio, poised to share her completed pieces with the public. In unveiling her creations, bold, unrefined, and stunningly raw, she had finally removed the weight of expectation that had burdened her for so long. The invite to her exhibition rippled through the community, the anticipation reverberating like an echo of her own journey. As the opening night drew nearer, the wave of excitement drowned out the echoes of her former self, replaced now with a solid confidence. When the day arrived, she breathed deeply as she stood among friends, family, and strangers alike, gazing at the walls adorned with her vivid expressions. Guests approached her, intrigued not merely by the colors, but also by the narrative threaded through each piece. The conversations sparked connections, revealing that vulnerability did, indeed, resonate deeply with people. In that moment, Amelia realized it wasn't just about revealing her journey. It provided others a pathway to discover their own. She was no longer confined to the shadows of her grandmother's legacy or stifled by her own doubts. She had conquered the fears that once held her captive. As the closing hour approached, Amelia stood poised at the edge of belonging, having established her place in the world beyond the confines of expectation. She had transformed into an artist of substance, her achievements manifesting not just through accolades, but through authentic connections forged through shared experiences. With an exhilarating sense of fulfillment coursing through her, Amelia understood that she had finally unraveled the threads of her heritage, weaving them into a new tapestry of self, colorful, chaotic, and profoundly her own. Now, dear viewers, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will touch your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these journeys of transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, and comment below your thoughts and theories about the ending. Your interaction is essential. Show your support for these incredible tales of personal overcoming and growth.